Okay, here we go again. We'll try this again. Thanks for hanging with me, guys. Okay, so then, let's drive your way. Okay, so what I'm looking for, I started off with Freud. Freud is my psychoanalytic person, right? So Freud looked at he's the first one that did the talk therapy. Before him, what we did was, so somebody stopped recording. Can you record again? Anybody hit the record button? There we go. Okay. Just make sure it stays on. For some reason, it keeps going off and on today. Okay. Okay. So, Freud is my psychoanalytic person. The job of a psychoanalytic person was to bring things from the unconscious to the conscious. Okay. So that's the goal. And what I said is psychoanalytic theory is what we used to do. 3 to 5 years laying on my couch. This was before insurance was around, and I could charge you anything and keep you forever. It was so great. Not gonna lie, not gonna lie, it was great. Then those HMOs came along, right? Health maintenance organizations, and they said you can't do that anymore. And now that's why your goals have to be very objectable and subjective, and you can measure them because now you have to prove to the insurance company why you're doing this treatment. Okay. So Freud's psychoanalytic theory is now called psychodynamic, and there are lots of people who still practice psychodynamic theory. The goal, again, is to bring things from the unconscious to the conscious. So this is different than Freud's psychosexual stages. His psychosexual stages are, OAPLG, oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital. So that's the human behavior. That's how we develop sexually. But pretty much anytime you see a word about sex, it's always going to be Freud on the test. Okay. So then our id, ego, and super ego. My id is my pleasure principle. Oh, oh. So we're born with that, he said, right? So we eat, sleep, and procreate. That's all we want to do. So innate basic instincts is what he said. Okay. So always remember your id is on one side, that's the devil, and your id says, I want it, I want it, I want it now. And your super ego says never, 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 never. Okay. And your ego is in the reality principle. So you've probably seen a video where I said I love pizza. I love pizza. I do love pizza. I'm not gonna lie. I love pizza so much. I do. I thin crust or Chicago style. I ain't gonna lie. Just love it, love it, love it. It gets in my braces, and that's not good for my butt either. So, but I do love it. So my id says, Pam, let's have pizza. Let's have pizza. If you order pizza now, you can eat half of it and have the rest of the other half for breakfast. Put eggs and bacon on the pizza. Oh my God, Pam! Like I want pizza. Okay. My super ego says, girl, have you looked at that butt recently? You know better. No, 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 no. My angel says, girl, eat salads, and not even any dressing, just some lemon on there, right? Because it says it wants us to be perfect. My reality is me. Okay. So whenever you see like your ego defense mechanisms, I think that might just be you. Okay. So whenever I see my ego defense mechanisms, that's the ego. So Freud said all of my defense mechanisms, that is protecting me from things that my ego can't handle. Okay. So devil, I want it now. Born with it. Super ego develops at 3 to 5. What do you know? The same time you find that toy box between your legs, right? That oral anal phallic stage. That's when the super ego develops, and it says no, no, no. Okay, so the goal was to he said that our personality developed based on the ego and super ego, and again, the ego is the one that keeps me in check. And he also talked about then the things that were in the unconscious. Okay, so in the unconscious is my id and my super ego, and you see in the preconscious there's some ego there. So the goal is to bring things from the unconscious to the conscious, right? He said that you don't remember what's down there. So I mentioned Carl Jung before. Carl Jung said, there were things down there that before your time, right? Things that were genetically handed down to you. Freud didn't believe that. Freud said, this is just your childhood stuff that you don't remember. So He would say the goal again is to bring the unconscious to the conscious. The pre-conscious, of course, those are things that you can remember by yourself if you try hard enough. Your first boyfriend, your first grade phone number, oh, the teacher you had in fifth grade, things like that. If you really try hard enough, you can get them. The pre-conscious is not the subconscious. Subconscious is a lay term. Okay, so we're not. It's never going to be the right answer on the test. It's your pre-conscious, and of course, Freud said there's a little bit in the conscious, right? A little bit right there. So he used this. The way that he got these up from the unconscious was a couple of ways. Okay, so he used a thematic apperception test. The thematic apperception test are the black and white photos. Sometimes it's called the TAT. You might even see the CAT. It's called the children's apperception test. And a lot of people still use the children's apperception test. Okay. So he's going to give you a couple of these, the black and white photos, and he's going to ask you what you see. And you will tell him, and he will tell you how wrong you are. So they're called projective. You're projecting from your unconscious onto the picture, right? And then they're called subjective because it was Freud's opinion. Remember, objective facts, subjective is my opinion. Okay, so projected from your unconscious onto the picture. The same thing he used with the Rorschach, which is your ink blot. Okay, and then so that's called the Rorschach. Same sort of thing. He would give you about 20 of them, same thing. So no matter what you say, he's going to say you're wrong because Freud believed he was the expert, right? He was the absolute expert. He knew everything. He could tell you everything. So okay, first theorist, right? He could be the expert. There's no one to compare him to. So the Rorschach is my ink blot. You might also see the Rotter's incomplete sentence, right? So the Rotter's is the one that you fill in the blank. You get that, complete that blank sentence, and you just say sports blank. I like blank. So he's always just giving you a blank sentence, and you're supposed to just come up with it off the top of your head. No thinking, no thinking. Okay. So those are the three that I'm looking for. Now we always see free association. Truth is that does not belong to Freud. He takes credit for it, but it does not. It belongs to Carl Jung. So if it says if it belongs to a psychoanalytic, it does. It really does, right? I say cat, you say dog, but it does not belong to Freud. Okay, but if you see the question on the test, is it psychodynamic? Yes. It's not going to ask you if it belongs to Jung. You're not going to see that. But if you've got all four of those things, like the Rotter and the thematic appreciation and all those things, the one that really doesn't belong to Freud is free association. Okay. So then my id, ego, and superego. That's also again where my defense mechanisms are going to come in at. He said the defense mechanisms are normal. They're part of who we are. They're not pathological. He just said that's what they are. If you spent some time with me, you know that my favorite one is intellectualization, right? That means instead of getting on the feeling level, I prefer to stay on the thinking level. So, my son was diagnosed with cancer, about 10 years ago. And when the doctor called and he said, oh my goodness, he has a what did he say? A lymphoma. I'm like, I don't know what that means. And I'm like Googling, right? Because like I know more than the, pediatric oncologist. That was that's where I went because my unconscious couldn't handle that. Transference, of course, is from the client onto you. Transference, Freud encouraged when he first started off. Especially he was working with women who had issues probably with their men, and he wanted the women to put feelings onto him that belonged to somebody else. So transference happens all of the time. If you're going through your man's phone because the last man cheated on you, that's transference. You're bringing the stuff from the last relationship into this relationship. So he called it sometimes the extra helper, the extra person in the room. He also, again, he encouraged it. Countertransference didn't come along till later. Countertransference is then the therapist, right? My feelings are getting in the way. So whenever it says something, the client does this and the therapist is angry. The therapist is upset, the therapist, whatever. My feelings are getting in the way. My feelings have no place in this relationship whatsoever. Right. So if I've got that transference, countertransference, I need to seek consultation, seek supervision. I'm looking for one of those answers. It has no place in there. Neither are good or bad. They just are. They just are, right? So I can have negative and positive. So negative is you remind me of someone maybe I didn't like, and positive is you remind me of someone that I did like. Either way, I have to be very aware of them. For in group settings, you'll see that you can have multiple transferences, right? So y'all had no security factor. So everybody in that group can remind me of somebody. You remind me of my mama, you remind me of my daddy, you remind me of something. So all of the group members can have multiple transferences. So I did say that Freud was a psychoanalytic. The term neo-Freudians, those are the people who, first of all, they didn't believe in that sex stuff, baby, right? No sex here. So neo-Freudians did not believe in the id and the superego, that whole like fighting thing. They said that wasn't true. And they also did not believe in the psychosexual development. Only Freud gets sex. So I don't teach these separately. If you want to come back and pick them up, Karen Horney, Eric Fromm, Henry Stack, those are the big ones. So those are the big ones. And all that means is that they don't believe that the id and the superego are playing this dance, and they don't believe in the psychosexual stage, but they're still very much people that were unconscious. And if you have time, come back and learn these. But I really, I get you to pass the test. That is my goal, to get you to pass the test. And if you want to make like 135, 140, then come back and pick these up. But most of us, we just want to pass. So that's what I teach you to help you pass the test. We mentioned object relations theory before. So object relations theory is Mailer. She also was a neo-Freudian, right? So that means she believed in some of that unconscious stuff, but she didn't believe in anything else. So Margaret Mailer, she said that if we don't get that relationship, if we don't have that one person to bond with, then we could be forever damaged. And literally, that's what she said. Um, so um, the object that needs to be consistent is unconscious. You're not aware of it. It's something on the unconscious. So what she said is that we have all of these stages, and if we don't go through these stages like we're supposed to, then as an adult, I could have borderline. She believed that conduct disorder came from that. Antisocial personality people. Antisocials are not asocial. Asocials don't like people. Antisocials like you because they're going to kill you and eat you and blame you. Okay, my serial killers are antisocial. So that first stage is autistic. Like babies just lay there. And her theory is way before we had autism. So don't be saying, why do we use this? We're just learning history. So autistic phase is that first month of life. Babies just lay there. And she said, not that important. So the second stage, of course, is going to be symbiosis. Symbiosis means that I know that I need this thing to live, right? I know, moss growing up a tree, right? I need this thing to live, but other than that, I don't know we're separate. So separation didn't happen until between 5 and 7 months. She said prior to that, we really, really didn't know that we were a separate person than mom. So at 5 months, separation, individuation, or sometimes it's called differentiation. All of those terms you might see, and that really is when she began to I'm going to get somebody there. If you get bumped out and you come back in, please mute yourself. Okay. So separation, individuation is when you realize you're different. The baby's a separate object than mom. So if you've had kids, you've got people who have kids. So between 5 and 7 months, you'll be nursing them. They're looking around, right? They get startled by other people. Oh my gosh, mom and I aren't the same person. That's when that happens. Okay. So there are a couple of stages after that, but I usually don't see those on the test. I do teach the rapprochement happens at about 18 months. And on test question, what that looks like is the baby's going to go further and further away. They might even like go around the corner, but they still want mom in their sight. Okay. And then object constancy between 2 and 3. So what she said is, if I haven't had that consistent person, if I haven't had that consistent thing in my life, then I definitely will. I'll worry about everything. So the intrapsychic, INTRA, that's always a Freud term. Intra means inside of me. That's a Freud term. When you see insight, that's a Freud or Adlerian. Other theories didn't look on the inside. So that's what that means. So what that looks like is now at between, at 3, you can drop the baby off at daycare. They'll cry, but they know you're coming back. So and she wrote this about orphanages, right? That people were passing through different caregivers. So if you work with kids now who are in the foster care system or things like that, it's the same thing. So if between the ages of, birth and 2, I've had 4 different caregivers, right? It could have been, I'm 16 when I had the baby, so my mama watches them one month, and then his mama watches them, and he watches them, and grandma watches him. If that person doesn't have that same person, that consistent person, that will never develop. Okay, so it's called your safe base. So I always say I did a really good job with that, because the minute my kids could leave the country, they did. Right? They love to travel, so they must really think mom's got their back, and that's literally what it means. I should have kept them home a little bit longer. Okay, so that is Mailer. Object constancy. We talked about that earlier, and I'll put that in your chat box as well. Most often, you might see Mailer under the human development, because she really is the child theorist. So sometimes you'll see her under there. Again, same thing. Those are her stages, right? Okay, and she said that the child develops trust that his or her needs will have been met. Attachment disorder, reactive attachment disorder, those little foster care kids or adopted kids that burn your house down with you in it, right? Borderlines, narcissists, all of those she thinks happened because you didn't have that one safe base. You didn't know growing up that somebody had your back. Oh, person centered, of course, that is Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Just remember, you know what? So he came along and he was purposely the exact opposite of Freud. Freud was the expert. He told you exactly what to do, and he told you were wrong when you open your mouth, right? Because he's the expert. Carl Rogers said, well, wait a minute here, right? The clients, I'm not the expert, the client is. It's their life. They can figure it out. So with Carl Rogers, you should know those words. Okay. So I'm looking for unconditional positive regard, genuineness, and empathetic understanding. So those words belong to Carl Rogers. Now you might see them other places, but I definitely, if it asks me which theorist, I know that they belong to Carl Rogers. Okay. Person centered, client centered, Rogerian, any of those things. That word phenomenological world. So that's a newer term. If you didn't graduate within the last 10 years, you might not have read that term in school. So your phenomenological world is your phenomenon, how you see the world. So whatever you told Carl Rogers, by the way, I killed my mom last week. Yeah, right. He's going to support me and tell me it's going to be okay, Pam. And it's like, the neighborhood, come on in. It's okay in the neighborhood. It's fine. So of course, Carl Rogers doesn't work for everybody, right? So that is not the best theory for everybody. You get those questions, you've got this group of drug users, and they're in denial. I'm not using client-centered. Oh, it's okay that went home and had another drink. It's okay, really. No, 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 no. So when you're reading those questions, that's not the best therapy for people who are in denial. The goal of this, of course, he said, is to be self-aware. The process of becoming, moving clients to self-actualization. Self-actualization is a Maslow term, the top of the hierarchy, right? The top of the theory of motivation. That is Maslow. So that's where that belongs to. Okay. So, in most of the theorists, you're going to see this, but it's crucial to client centered. The relationship between the client and the counselor were critical concepts. We always know that the most important thing in the therapeutic relationship is the alliance, the relationship between the client and the counselor. Right? You can be the best Gestalt person. I can do TA. I'm be amazing. But if I don't have a therapeutic alliance with that client, it doesn't really matter. Okay, and that belongs to all theories in general, but specifically, Carl Rogers said that. Okay, and again, it was purposely he reacted against a directive psychoanalytic approach, and it was very directed. Tell you what to do, tell you were wrong, blah blah blah. When it comes to multicultural counseling, many of my multicultural clients prefer that direct approach. Okay, so just tell me what to do. So that's that medical model, right? I go to the doctor and I've got a headache and he gives me a pill. So on the test, again, it's looking at they prefer the direct approach. Don't make me look back and figure out what happened in my childhood. Just tell me what to do. So again, Carl Rogers said the purpose of it becoming, moving clients to self-actualization and the relationship was critical. Those are his terms. Okay. The focus on counseling went from the past to the present and was on feelings. We're staying into the feelings. You don't need to know what book he wrote, but you do need to know again, person-centered, client-centered, Rogerian. Those are the words I'm looking for. And again, whatever he said, whatever you said was okay. You were responsible, and he was going to support you. Fritz Perls is Gestalt, right? So Gestalt is here and now. So it's based on an existential principle. So existentialism, we'll talk about that in general, but that's a theory and also just a belief system. So my existentialists are always looking at what is my purpose? Why am I here? So Fritz Perls Gestalt had that same thing. He wanted to focus on the here and now. However, he said we can't focus on the here and now until we get rid of that unfinished business. So the two-chair technique, right? Tell your mama you're sitting in that chair right there. Tell her what you want to tell her. All of those things. So I'm looking for that belongs to Fritz Perls. Okay. So the word Gestalt means whole. He wanted you to be a whole person, and you can't be a whole person, he said, until you get rid of the past. So you probably all seen this term. It's called figure ground. And you probably got taught it in graduate school many years ago for some of us. Okay. So that figure ground belongs to Gestalt. And what it means is I'm trying to be whole. So what he said is whatever is in the background needs to come to the foreground. Okay. So that is so click on that again. Okay, so whether you see the face or the vase, there's no right or wrong answer, but that's what he said. Okay, so be a whole person, and whatever comes from the background needs to be brought to the foreground. Okay. So he's called an experiential therapist, experiential, because you actually did something, right? He was a very concrete kind of person. So talking to the empty chair, those things are called experiential because you were doing it. The only other theorists we're going to see that are experiential, that did hands-on, would be like our family theorists, right? The ones who joined the family. So other than that, when I look at these theorists, we're not looking for the word, we're not looking for experiential except for Gestalt. Okay, so to the extent the need is in the forefront, it represents the figure and the others in the ground, in the ground, i.e., the background. As needs are met, it completes the Gestalt, and a new need takes its place. Okay, the goal for individuals in therapy is to become a whole being, to be a Gestalt. Okay, so if I'm still, worried about my mama did to me when I was 4 and 5 and 6, I can't be a whole person at 50 because I'm still, I'm not over what my mom did to me. So he's really, the goal is to let go of that. And it's not just a simple let go. It was a process. It was a process of letting go. But the goal is to be now in the here and now because I've let go of the other stuff. Okay. And again, so role playing, two-chair technique, and dream work were used. Interpretation is not done by the client, but by the counselor. I'm sorry, it's not done by the client, but by the counselor. So if a client is telling me something, right, then I would do the interpretation is done by the client. The client would tell me. So as opposed to Freud, and Freud told you exactly what everything meant. So the Gestalt said, no, no, you do that. When it comes to individual psychology, so the only place you'll ever see Rudolf Drucker is with individual psychology. So I really don't even teach his name. I only teach the Adler skills. Okay, so if I happen to see them together, I know. But in general, I'm looking for the Adler terms. Adler believed in, he was my birth order guy, right? He believed in, birth constellation. I'm a firstborn, so I think they're all true when it comes to that. And I have seen questions on knowing, like, this is their personality and what does it look like? Okay, so again, whether you believe it or not, this is what he would say, and that's all that really matters for the test is what he would say. So you're looking for the words inferiority and superiority. So he said, I'm a firstborn, right? That life was great for me, and I was feeling really superior and on top of the world. Then came all that other my brother, like, oh my gosh. So I was knocked off my throne, and now I feel inferior. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to feel superior. Okay. So the only child, the oldest, the second, of course, there's a whole list of those. If the children are more than 7 years apart, you start over. Right. So I have three firstborns. They're all 6.5 years apart, and they all think they're only children. So I really have either three only children or three firstborns, either way. So that's what it looks like. So if it says that in my situations, I was married for 30 million years, 30 years at least, and my son was 12 when my last son was born. Okay, so then in that situation, my son really was kind of doing his own thing. Didn't really care about the baby. So the baby, then when she was born, was really the only one. My daughter was almost 7, the middle child. So he talked about the birth order. Inferiority and superiority are words that I'm looking for. The unified lifestyle, like, so the unified life plan and lifestyle, those are his words. He, again, so also counseling strives to explain the client to themselves and for them to overcome inferiority. With Adler, you might see those terms, the sour grapes, sweet lemons, right? Those are Adler defense mechanisms. So, you reach for the grapes and they weren't good anyway. Right? Spitting in the client's soup, that term also belongs to Adler. So you're looking for the terminology of who that belongs to. There's another term, and I'm not sure if it's in this book, and it might be in the human behavior. It's called guiding fictions. The guiding fictions are what we learned in childhood, and those are the mistales, right? The myths, the things that aren't true that we keep telling ourselves in adulthood. Okay, so they're called guided fictions, and that term is an Adler term as well. Okay. There's more about him in the human development section. So we can go back and pick that up. And I think there's more about him in this section as well as you get down there. TA is Eric Bernet. Eric Bernet. So he believed in parent, adult, and child. And do not say id, ego, super ego. Do not say parent, adult. Don't say what else? Something else. Mom, grandparent, something, self. Don't use those terms, okay? Because that's not true. And I don't want you to get the terms confused. I want you to know exactly what Eric Bernays said, okay? So he talked about the scripts. That word belongs to him. So TA is transactional analysis, and literally what his job was to do was to look at the communication patterns, look at the interactions between the adults. Okay, I should be coming adult to adult, right? So I'm talking to you. I shouldn't talk down to you. I shouldn't be disrespectful. I shouldn't be rude, right? We're adult to adult. So, and that's how it should happen. So, perfect, right? Adult to adult. That's our goal of living life is I'm going to be respectful and talk to you like we're equals. Perfect. That's what we should be doing. Occasionally, it's okay to come from this complementary style, right? So if I'm in a situation where I need somebody, so if you get COVID and you need your spouse or somebody else's spouse or somebody to take care of you, right? That's fair to child. You're in your childlike role, your childlike state. I'm sick. Can you give me some chicken soup? Can you give me this? Can you give me that? Right? So that's I'm coming from my childlike state. And that's really okay occasionally. There's nothing wrong with that occasionally. The problem is when it happens all the time. All of us are coming from that childlike state at some point, whether it's a relationship like husband and wife or it's at work. So if you've heard some of my older videos, I'll say, and I still can't change toner in the machine. The cop, I cannot change that toner. I don't know why. And I'm brilliant now. I can't figure it out. I can't. So I call somebody always to come change a toner for me. So I'm coming from a childlike state, and I really am. Like, can you help me out? I hate to ask, but and usually I've like spent like 20 minutes trying to figure it out. I've Googled it, I've done everything I can, I still can't figure it out. So I call somebody, I say, hey, can you come help me to do it? So they're coming from their parent role, and they'll say, hey, Pam, I got you. Let me show you what's going on here. Do it again. So that's okay as long as it's occasionally. So all those roles complement each other. Okay. So the crossed relationships, the crossed are when it happens that way all the time. Okay. But at least I know about it. So a crossed is I'm in a relationship. I'm married what's the term? What's it called when the younger man marries the older woman? Yeah. I'm in that relationship and I know that the older woman is taking care of me and she makes sure I have money in my pocket and she says, hey, do you have this, you have that, things like that. I signed up for it. I'm good with it. Okay. So he would say that's not the healthiest, but at least I know, right? I work for a boss that treats all women like, they're dingy bats. And I say, oh, yes, a cougar. Thank you very much. And I should know that. And if you got my kids, my youngest one is, my oldest one is almost 30. So I can date anyone that's 31 and over. Well, that's the rule. But I'm 56. So if you got any sons, cousins, or uncles, let me know. So anyway, though, so the cross relationships I'm aware of it. My boss talks down to me. I don't know about you guys, but I've definitely had, and I'm older than you guys, definitely. But I've had some, especially, starting work, that I had some bosses that really, and I started work with my master's degree, and I had bosses that talked to me like I was 12. So definitely, and at the time I was aware of it, but I need the job, right? And I also didn't have enough self-esteem or enough experience to say screw you. So now I do. But we've all been there, right? We've been in these relationships. They're crossed, but I know about it. The problem is the ulterior ones. Those are the ones that make me crazy. So I think we're coming adult to adult, right? We're coming from adult to adult. And you say something, and I'll say, honey, don't treat me like a child. I got this, I got this. And he says, no, 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 I'm not treating you like a child. And then the next day he says, did you remember to get up and go to work? I got some transference. Okay, that was, really happened in my life. I am 50-something years old. I've been going to work since I raised 3 kids. What the hell do you mean? So that's the ulterior motive. So that's the problem, is because I really, it makes you crazy because you say to the person, don't treat me this way, and they deny it. So an example that he uses, or the example in this research article, it says ulterior transactions always involve two or more ego states in parallel. Okay, so two or more ego states. That means I think we're coming to adult, right? And you say you are, but we're not really. So in that ulterior state, somebody keeps coming in. You get blocked out and you come back in. You gotta mute yourself, guys. Okay. So that the last one, the example is, so a manager tells an employee, "This is a really intriguing problem, but it may be too hard for you." Like, what? Right? That's like double talk. Paradoxical therapy, or any of my strategic family therapy, would call that a double bind theory. Right? You're telling me some stuff and then telling me something else. I can make up your mind. So in that theory, the goal is to then teach the person to get rid of those childlike scripts. He said that was on purpose. It was purposeful, that you were manipulating the purpose of the person on purpose. Very directive approach, to call you on your stuff and tell you to, use your adult voice, use your adult conversations, not your child. He said we learned that conversation. We learned how to relate to people in childhood, and if we still operate from that place, that's manipulative and that's purposely mean. So the goal is to either live a scriptless life, right? Living with all these scripts, or learning to balance your ego states, right? So if I'm coming adult to adult, then we're all up front, we know it. So, but he said, um, a better approach is to avoid innuendos and break the conversation down into two complementary transactions, right? So really exposing the meaning of the conversation. So transactions, how we relate to each other, how we talk to each other, how we treat each other in relationships. So that is T.A. Eric Bernay. He did write the book, The Games People Play. Thomas Harris wrote, I'm Okay, You're Okay. He was a TA guy also, but most often you're not going to see him on the test. Okay. He said those third degree, those ulterior games, the last one, those are games. And he said third degree games are very dangerous. Okay, so the games people play, that's the one that belongs to him. Okay, again, it says the same thing. Your life script, remember that your life script only belongs to TA. So if I see that in a question, I know automatically who it belongs to. And what I hear all the time is, well, there was only one line. So if the line says, this person is working from their life script or working on their life script, I know who that belongs to. You've got to know the terminology that theorist would use. Okay. And I can't say the way that he talks or the way that he thinks, because that's not the word to look for. I have to know that life scripts belongs to Eric Bernay. And the games he will play, I have to know that terminology. And again, this is what it looks like. Okay. The goal of therapy is to teach the client the language and the ideas of TA in order to recognize ego state functioning and analyze my own transactions, analyze how I talk to somebody. Okay. Existentialism. That is Rollo May and Viktor Frankl. Now, Yalom was an existentialist. So in those curative factors, remember those 11 curative factors? Existentialist is one of those terms that Yalom used. But when you see the question about existentialism, you're often looking for Viktor Frankl and Rollo May. So Viktor Frankl, he's the one that was in the Nazi concentration camp. When in doubt, go to Wikipedia, right? Let's see. Okay, so his famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, that's his book. So David Levinson has a book about men also, right? Daniel Levinson. So don't get those confused. So this one belongs to Viktor Frankl. And literally what existentialism is what is my purpose? Why am I here? Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Why do I exist? So Frankel pointed out to 22 research indicating a strong relationship between meaningless and criminal behavior, addictions, and depression. Okay, he said without meaning, people fill the void with hedonistic pleasure. So if I don't know what I'm here for, I don't know what my purpose is, it's not going to lead to good. Hedonistic means pleasure for me, right? Anhedonia, if I put that A-N in front of it, that means lack of pleasure. So there was one of those Jamaican islands called hedonism, pure pleasure. So we needed to find meaning and purpose in life. Okay. So again, his story is that he was, so when you see the book, the term logotherapy, that's the book he wrote while he was in the Nazi concentration camp. So logotherapy is the same as using his words, right? So logotherapy, I'm thinking Viktor Frankl, I'm thinking Rollo. Why do I exist? Let's see here. It was developed when he was in the Nazi concentration camp. The years there deeply affected his understanding of reality and the meaning of life. It really talks about when I think of this theory, he was a Jewish psychiatrist. So he's got this great life one day, and then the Nazis come in and they take all of his family and everybody he knows and puts him in a concentration camp. Okay, he watched everybody around him die, including his mother and his sister. So surviving, he was like, okay, Lord, now what? Right? I survived, but there's got to be a reason for this. Why did this happen? And why do I exist? So really you're searching for meaning, but it came from, and you can imagine, I think, I tell that anecdotal. So when you're thinking of that theory, that'll come up, right? Because everybody around him died. And you can imagine this is very wealthy, rich doctor, and his life changed. And watching again, everybody he knew gets into the gas chamber. So why do I exist? What is my meaning? Why am I here? Okay. So then we go back to the word you're going to see in the book. Okay. So then these names I don't need to know. If it's important, I would have told you so. Okay, we're good. That term feminology, right? Same thing we saw earlier when we were looking at Rogerian theory, client-centered. So it's how the client sees the world. That's all that matters from your viewpoint. Okay. That same word for Piaget was schema, right? Your schema. I always pat my forehead. That's the same term, but that belongs to Piaget. So the way that you see the world is where we're coming from. So feminology is the study of our direct experience taken at face value. Okay, so if I tell you this is what happened to me and this is how I feel, you're not going to question me, right? Whatever I said is what matters. He said that we're a freedom of choice and responsible for our own fate. Now be careful because responsibility belongs to somebody else. Okay, so let's not get too close with that responsibility. What I teach is you're searching for meaning and you struggle with being alone. You're worried about being unconnected with others. So the major concepts are anxiety and guilt. Anxiety is a threat of not being, right? Just not being seen, not being heard, not being here. And then the guilt that occurs when we fail to fulfill our potential, right? So I'm looking for why am I here? What is my purpose? Why do I exist? The goal of existential therapy is to understand one's being, one's awareness of who one is and who one is becoming. Okay. I think of Rick, Purpose Driven Life. Rick Warren, right? Yes, and Purpose Driven Life, right? So that's really what the book was about. Like, why am I here? What is your purpose? And again, he said that if we have meaning, if we have voids in our life, we're going to fill them with things that are not good. So then we need to figure out what our purpose is. So the awareness of freedom is, he said, it's an ongoing thing. We're trying to learn awareness. So he said it's an ongoing approach. Yes, so client-centered techniques, some of those words I used already. Logotherapy's book, The Man's Search for Meaning. That's after he got out of the concentration camp. Logotherapy was written when he was in the camp. He said we have freedom to choose. People have freedom to choose what they want and how they react, and with freedom of choice comes personal responsibility. So those terms most often are going to belong to reality therapy. So when I see existentialism, why am I here? Why am I purpose? I'm looking for anxiety and guilt. Those are the words that most often I'm going to see that belongs to him. Go down to reality therapy and come back because we're here. So reality therapy is Glasser. Glasser is considered postmodern. That means he's one of my newer ones. So postmodern means newer ones. Like neo-Freudians means they're kind of like Freud, but not really. So when I see postmodern, that's what that means. So Glasser said, he's the one when I think of responsibility and choice, that's the name I want you to think of, because what's what I'm looking for in the question is that reality theory is those words. So what he said is we have these, all of us have these goals in life. He said that we were born with those needs, and how we get those needs met is up to us. We have a choice on how we get those needs met. I like the picture. There we go. Okay, so love and belonging, power, fun, survival, and freedom. That we are born with having needing those needs to be to met. That's how we're born. So we spend our life getting those needs met. So, however, I choose to get those needs met, there's responsibility that comes with my choice. Okay, so love and belonging, if I'm looking to be loved and I try to find it in somebody else's husband, that's probably not going to work out for me, but there are consequences for that, right? I made that choice and I got to be responsible for the choice that I made. He did not believe in anything unconscious, and really reality. This is your choice, man. So this is what you chose. Don't be upset because you chose that. So let me go back to his terms. Yeah, it's Glasser. He came in the 70s. That makes him postmodern. That's pretty new. The choice therapy is to be happy in life, and we're all trying to get here in life, but we're responsible for our choices. If the question is you've got, a 3-year-old and he doesn't want to go to bed, we are not using reality therapy, are we? No, we're not. Get your butt in bed. But if I've got a 18 or something or a 17-year-old something who's trying to figure out life and he's dropping out of school and he hasn't made any choices, that's when we use reality therapy, right? So okay, if you choose not to go to school, if you choose to have fun and freedom instead, there's going to be responsibility for that. Okay. So choice therapy, individuals determine their own fate and are in charge of their lives. Our perceptions control our behavior. So, how I see it. We behave inappropriately or appropriately to get those needs met. And again, that's what they are. Genetic base. That means I was born needing to get those needs met. Survival, love and belonging, power or achievement, freedom and independence and freedom. I'm sorry, freedom or independence and fun. Choice theory really means we get to control the way we act around our lives. If it doesn't satisfy our needs, oh well. So take responsibility. That's the key concept of taking responsibility for what I did. WDEP, I don't teach that anymore. I haven't seen that. I don't teach it at school anymore, and I haven't seen it on the test in ever. So if you decide you want to go back and come back and pick it up, feel free to. Feminist therapy. It ain't just for women anymore, right? It really definitely started off just with women. Remember, so Carol Gilligan, she's the female that went against so Kohlberg, right? She said, Kohlberg said women aren't men. Kohlberg said women are not moral, and Carol Gilligan said that's not true. At the same time that Karen Horney, so that was really in the 70s with that late 60s, early 70s with the feminist movement. We all burned our bras and, we're happy. So that's where this theory came from and where it started. However, now it's not just for women. It's there for anyone who is marginalized. So my Black, my brown, my poor, my LGBTIAQ plus community. So the theory is what is personal is political. The personal is political and critical consciousness. So what that means is, so if a client comes in because he's depressed and he can't get a job, according to feminist theory, then it's not because of him, it's because of the environment. So if he can't get a job because he's gay, can't get a job because he's a black man, whatever those things, we're going to look at social change, not change inside of him. Okay, so the personal is political. The problems of the client have societal and political roots, which are often result in marginalization, oppression, subordination, and stereotyping. Okay, so it's just not for women anymore. So yet women and girls' voices are a way of knowing, as well as the voices of others who've experienced marginalization and oppressed our values, and their experiences are honored. Okay, so again, it was written for women, but it's not just for women anymore. The counseling relationship is egalitarian. That means that we're equal, right? So Carl Rogers said that you're the expert, and Freud said, no, you're not the expert. But in feminist therapy, we are definitely equal. Okay. REBT, I think that's where we're going next. Oh, we're going to Lazarus. Lazarus. So Lazarus did not have his own theory. He just put everybody else's together. Like, hey, yo, pretty smart dude. What you're looking for with Lazarus and his basic ID, basic id, who am I, is I am looking for the term preferred modalities. So however the client presents to you is how we're going to treat them. So the same issue can present itself in different ways. Okay, so what he said is, however the client shares it with you, however they come in, whatever they say, that's their preferred modality. I'm going to treat them the way that they shared it with me. So if they say it's a behavior problem, I'm going to treat them behaviorally, right? So let's say it's depression. I come in and I tell you that you know what, I can't get out of bed. I've lost my job. I just all the time I just want to lay on the couch and veg. So if that's how I present it in behavioral terms, that's how he's going to treat me. So Pam, what do we need to do? Those very direct objectives, right? Get out of bed. Shower at least 3 times a week. Very much behavioral approach. Remember, behaviors don't care how you feel. Don't care what you think. Just change the behavior. Right? That's Pavlov and Skinner. Just change the behavior. Skinner said that he could change anybody's behavior. You guys were just like animals. All you need are rewards and consequences. Okay. Affect is mood. Remember that? So whether you see that term affective, AFECTIVE. So affective means your mood or the look on your face that represents your mood. So if I come in and I present with helplessness, if my depression looks like me, sad, crying, things like that, then that's how you're going to treat me, right? We're going to take a mood approach where you deal with my moods, sharing about feelings, controlling your anger. If I say I'm depressed and I'm so sad all the time, and that's what shows on my face, and that's how you're going to treat me. Okay. So sensations, the sensations are all your five senses, of course, and also then things like trauma, tension. So if I mention that as the way my body feels, that's how you're going to treat me, right? So if my depression, again, my depression, my back hurts, my legs hurt, any of those things, however I mention that to him is again how he's going to treat me. So BAS, basic ID, who I am. So the first I is imagery. Again, how the client presents to you, that's what we're going to treat them with. Positive imagery. Cognitions. That's the same as CBT or cognitive therapy. If you come to me with some irrational thinking, right? Some faulty thoughts, then we're going to talk about it. So we're going to treat it again. So like Beck said that he didn't think depression wasn't real. Depression was faulty thinking. So if that's how you present, that's how he's going to treat you. The bibliotherapy is book therapy, giving a person a book to read. Okay, so that's all that term means. I've done it a lot when I was in practice, and probably many of you have too. Go home and read. I used to use Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. That's how old I am, way back in the day. And now we use like the love languages. So whenever you give a client a book to read, that's just called bibliotherapy. Interpersonal, INTER. Remember, INTER always means with other people. INTRA, that was a Freudian term, intra-psychic. Inter means with other people. Intercourse takes more than one person, right? So intercourse is how I behave with other people, whether it's in a group setting or a family setting. It's how I relate with other people. So if I tell you again that my spouse is rejecting, I feel isolated, whatever, however I share that to you, my relationships, that's how you're going to treat me. And the last one is D. So it stands for drugs, but not really. I'm looking for any of the physical sensations. So if I come in and say, you know what, so if I'm smoking all the time and I say I've got no energy, that's a client symptom that's physical. If I oversleep, undersleep, I don't eat, I overeat, I overeat or undereat, any of those things, he's going to treat me that way. So the term is preferred modalities. However a client presents is how we're going to treat them. Okay. So multimodal therapy. Again, the words we're looking for: comprehensive, holistic approach. It's classified as eclectic. The term eclectic means that I use many different theories. If I'm integrative, I usually have my own theory. I use CBT or some kind of CBT that I use every time, and I've chosen to go out and get another one and bring it in. So for this client, I'm going to use some insight. I'm going to use some Freudian stuff. So that's integrative. Eclectic means that I a little bit of everything. So that's what he is. He's an eclectic therapist. The problem with being an eclectic therapist, at least for the test, is if I'm eclectic, I don't know any one theory really well. So I'm like a jack of all trades. Okay, so that's what that term looks like in the test. I'm an ABCD of REBT, right? So he says it is the irrational beliefs. So CBT and REBT sound so much alike. REBT is supposed to address the feelings, where CBT yes. So REBT is supposed to reflect the beliefs, the irrational beliefs, and CBT looks at the irrational thoughts. And you might see those terms interchangeably. They're not trying to trick you, though. They're really not. So you're not going to see both of those on the test, off those in the same test question, and it not be clear. They're going to make it very clear so you know the difference. That's the ABCDE of REBT. So this is Ellis. Ellis said it is not the event, right? It is not the event that causes the problem. This is the belief about the event. None of you in this group, but some of the other groups I tutored, I failed the test. And then my belief system is I shouldn't have gone into counseling. I'm in the wrong profession. I should have gone into nursing. I should have become a teacher, anything, because I can't pass this test. I ain't meant to be a counselor. None of you guys, but other people, right? So if that's my irrational belief system about the event, then the emotional consequences, I'm going to feel awful about myself. I spent 6 years in this profession. They didn't teach me crap in school, and I studied that purple book and nothing happened. All of those irrational emotions because of my irrational belief system. And I'm really thinking maybe I'm not built for this profession. I wasted my time and my money. So those are the consequences if I believe that I'm not a counselor because I failed the test. Then I'm going to come along and say, now look around, look to the left, look to the right, cubicle over. He ain't got no sense, right? He asks you for stuff and he passes licensure test, right? Or disputes your rational beliefs. Just because he can pass his test doesn't mean he's a better therapist than you. It means he's a better test taker than you, but not a better therapist. So I'm confronting your irrational beliefs. And then, of course, when I confront those, you should have effective new consequences. Say, hey, you know what? Maybe I didn't pass the test this time, but I'm a really good clinician. I've got the skills that it takes to work with my clients, and I need to work on my skills to pass the test, but it doesn't mean I'm like a bad clinician. So it's the belief system about the event that's the problem. It's the ABCDE of REBT. I'm looking for irrational beliefs. Um, um, I'm looking for emotions as opposed to CBT, which are thoughts. But I might see irrational thoughts here as well. I really might. I'm going to go to DBT while I'm here. DBT is Marsha Linehan. And Marsha Linehan is also considered postmodern. In general, we don't have treatments for personality disorders, right? We know that people are born with, well, not born, but they've had it their whole life. They've always been this way. That my conduct disorders, my little kids that kill animals when they're little, they're going to, kill people when they're older, right? So personality disorders, as a rule, don't have a treatment. Personality disorder, ego syntonic, in sync with my ego. So I'm not coming for therapy. There's not a problem. It's you. So normally borderlines don't come for therapy, right? It's you. If you've ever spent more than like 20 minutes in the room with a borderline, right, and you think you're crazy, you are. No, it's them, really. It's not you, it's them. Okay, so what I'm looking for is I'm trying to make the behavioral issue, I'm sorry, the personality issue, borderline, those traits, I'm trying to make those ego alien or ego dystonic, foreign to your ego. So these are the terms that she used, and you really might see this in, like, school systems have developed this approach. So mindfulness means to sit in the place without judgment. Okay, and if you watch any of my old videos, I will tell you, and this was like, God, so long ago. When I took my test, pencil and paper, and we had to wait 6 to 8 weeks to get it back. But I remember sitting in the room. I remember being in the room, and just good or bad, I was in the room. I was in the room, looking around, thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm with all these amazing people. I'm in the room." So that's not this mindfulness, right? Whether I fast, whether I fail, I'm in the room. Because there were many times in undergrad and grad, I wasn't sure I was going to be in that room, right? Right? The things happen. I needed to be very mindful of this is where I am and this is what's going on. Emotional regulation, your borderlines are hot and cold, lovey, 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 hate you, hate you, hate you. So learning to regulate my emotions, increasing my distress tolerance. So when it gets tough for borderlines, right? If you're in a therapy session with them and you're working with them, and suddenly you get close to something, a feeling, they're done, right? They're going to run away. They're done because they cannot, they don't like that feeling of distress. And again, INTER, so they have their interpersonal relationships are not very good. They're in relationships for a very short period of time, and then usually they leave because they're afraid of being left. That is Marsha Linehan. That is DBT, dialectic behavior therapy, and that is definitely something I'm going to use with my borderline personality. DBT, so chain analysis, that term belongs to it. DBT practitioners might use the tools such as diary cards, tracking the interfering behaviors. The chain analysis is going back to figure out how I got here, right? So I'm upset, I'm yelling at everybody, I'm ready to, kill somebody. And that chain is so Pam, where could you have stopped that? Right? Going back in this, when he first said something, maybe you should have said something back instead of keeping that information. Okay. So that is DBT. A chain analysis, the dynamics of the milieu or the culture. That milieu, many times you'll see that term, it really means most often a residential setting. In the milieu is like in the middle. So in the middle of this group, in the middle of this setting. So a milieu therapist means often someone who's just working on the floor, someone who's part of that therapeutic team. DBT is knows a long-term intervention because it requires learning new skills, practicing, and acquiring a number of skills by the clients. CBT, again, I said that's Aaron Beck. Aaron Beck said if you change your stinking thinking, right, then you will definitely change your behavior. He was very directive and also always questioning. That term Socratic counts, Socratic questioning, like over and over again. So if you come in and you say, "Hey, I'm depressed," he's going to say, "What does that look like? I don't have any friends. They won't hang out with me." And he's going to say, "Prove it to me. Prove it to me. Prove it to me," because he really believed that it wasn't that wasn't depression wasn't a real thing. That it was how you thought about it, and if I could change your thinking pattern, then I would there change the way you feel and your behavior, right? CBT, Aaron Beck. The Beck's anxiety scale, the Beck's depression scale. The other people, Donald Meckenbaum, he is my stress inoculation guy. He's on here. Stress inoculation is like anything else. So when I go to get like the vaccine for COVID or the flu vaccine, so I'm getting inoculated with a little bit of the virus, so I can build up some tolerance. Same sort of thing. He said, if get you practice being stressful. He said, practice stressful situations. Um, um, have a plan because stress is something's going to happen. So have a plan. Be prepared. So all of those things will help me deal with that much, much better. Solution focus, SFBT, that is the miracle question, right? You come to that's the only one that doesn't start with the medical model. It starts with the solution focus. The medical model means I come into therapy, and you say, "What's wrong, Pam?" Right? I'm trying to fix what's wrong. The solution focus comes in and says, "Hey, Pam, you know what? If you wake up tomorrow and all your problems went away, what would it look like? How would you know?" So that's the miracle question. Also, scaling that belongs to the miracle question. So if I tell you tomorrow when I'm not depressed, I'll be able to get up and run 5 miles and feel great and energized all by 5 a.m., right? Not. The scaling question would be, so Pam, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at now? Right? It's 6 to 8 sessions, very, very brief, always. My narrative therapy, the word you're looking for in narrative therapy is to change the way that you talk, the stories you tell yourself in your head. They're very specific words. Okay. So many my clients just kind of say, "Oh, what's how you talk?" That's not going to help you pass the test because that's not what I need to know. What I need to know are very specific terms. I'm going to take the story outside of my head. That's called externalization, right? Take it out of my head. Then I'm going to take it apart, deconstruct it. I'm going to rewrite it and put it back in my head, rewrite it or reauthor. Okay. So it's not just your how you talk. It's changing the stories you've heard in your head, whether you told yourself that or you've heard it from your mom and them. You ain't never gonna be nothing. You ain't gonna never have nothing. Blah blah blah. Those things that we tell ourselves over and over and over again. Okay. So the goal again is I'm going to externalize it. I literally think I've taken my brain out of my head, taking that those words out of my head, take them apart. Where did it come from? Right? Did I learn it because mom and them said it? Did I learn it because my husband said it? Where did it come from? Is it things I've said to myself? And then I'm going to externalize it, take it apart, rewrite it, reauthor it, and then kind of put it back in my head. Okay. So those are the terms I'm looking for: externalization, deconstruction. Those are terms that belong to narrative therapy. Okay. Stories use words and language to give meaning to experiences and help determine feelings and attitudes. Okay, so if we can rewrite those stories, I mentioned integrative counseling, right? That is different from integrative. Integrative means I have I'm a jack of all trades, right? I'm good at all of them, but not really good at any of them. And the other one is integrate. I think that's probably it. Let me just cover somebody else. Carhut. Carhut is my guy that looked at the counselor's empathy. So he's the only theorist that looked at the counselor and what the counselor could do. So what you're looking for is I'm looking for, so he said that your response can be additive. You can add to it. He said you can take away from it, or you can multiply it. Right? Sorry, no. Add, take away, or interchangeable. I can increase the conversation that we have, the discussion, by adding something that's very empathetic, taking away, saying that's something that's not empathetic at all, or I can make it more interchangeable based on what how I respond. So what I'm looking for in that question is then it's always going to be a 1 or a 5. 5 is the most empathetic, right? Okay, and the least empathetic is going to be 1. It's going to be very, very clear. Pam comes in, she tells you of this awful incident that happens last night, and she's emotional. And the counselor says, "So, did you want to go have some lunch?" Right? Like I didn't even say anything. That's going to be a 1, and it's going to be a 5. So 2, 3, and 4 are very subjective. We're not going to have subjective answers on the test. It's going to be very clear what my answer is. Okay. I think I've covered the main people, and we're going to go to questions, but ask me questions before we go to questions. I know I like the word vomit, and I talk really fast. And I just go back and watch this a million times because you need these terms. You need there's 48 questions based on these sections, right? You got to know these terms. So hold on. Is integrative similar to basic ID? So yes, Lazarus is an integrative therapist because he said we're treating their preferred modality. So he does not focus on one theory. He focuses on so the behavior therapy or the cognitive behavior theory. So all different theories. Okay. There's another question. Sorry, I just wanted to get that one that was in the chat box. Who was the last theorist? Carhuff and his empathy scale. Put it in the chat box. Any other questions, guys? I went over a lot very quickly. I'm aware of that, so but ask me questions. Right. Good, good, good. Thanks. Okay, okay. Yes, thank you. Those belong to Ainsworth. And Ainsworth is we look at her and the normal human development. So she looks at how when you drop the kids. So Ainsworth and Bowlby and Ainsworth, they're both attachment theorists. So they looked at the relationship between the mom and the child. So if you had a very good relationship with the child, right, they may cry when you pick them up from daycare, but they'll be fine and they're warmed by their caregiver. And then when you come back, they'll be fine as well. So yeah, that is Ainsworth. Mm-hmm. Um, I I don't think so. So Rollo May and Viktor Frankl, and also Yalom can be a bit existentialist. He's his own. That's okay. Yes, yeah, he's his own. He is, yeah. Oh, I know. I said experiential. That's what I said. Experiential. So yeah, that's what I said. Hands on. You're actually doing something. You're experimenting. That's what I said. Okay. Those are they're human development theorists. So that's another, yes. So that is how we grow up. So someone said also Ainsworth, it looks at children, right? Usually Margaret Mailer is in the human development section because as we grow up. Helwig puts it in this section. I'm not really sure why, but most often on the test, that's going to be a human development question. ZPD, the zone of proximal development, that belongs to Lev Vygotsky. Those things you're going to find in the human development section. Just as important. Freud and Erickson and Piaget, Kohlberg. You got to know those ages and stages. You got to. You're not going to pass this test unless you know them. And you can't just memorize them. You got to put them in make them make sense in a sentence, right? Y'all all know somebody in one of them stages. Mm-hmm. Mhm. Okay, so Fritz Perls is not person-centered. I don't want you to confuse the terms because that only belongs to Carl Rogers. Okay, so Carl Rogers is going to be person-centered, client-centered, Rogerian. Okay. Uh-huh. Yalom, I said he is existentialist, but you're not going to see him in this either. You're going to see him in you'll see him in the group section. So integrative means I have a little bit of everybody. So Lazarus is the one who the basic ID said he didn't have his own theory. What he looked at was bringing everybody else's theory. So integrative theory is just bringing everybody else's in. I don't really have one of my own. I'm just kind of a jack of all trades. I got a little CBT over here. I'm gonna learn a little behaviors over here. Any of those things. I'll put it in the chat box, Stephanie, when I finish. Go ahead. How'd you do? How did you do? What is your test date? I don't say that you need to test until the 2 weeks out. And if you did the Helwig, you did both those NCE and the CBC and the NCE. You're doing pocket prep. It's the exact same thing. So those are the same. You're using one study instead of more than one. Do you have the blue or the green book? Okay, so do all those questions in the back of that one. There's 4 tests, 4 in 2 NCE and 2 CPCE. Okay, so go over those. That'll help you. Hmm. Did you tell me I did it already? I was saying she just told me I did it. So what do you mean put it in? Yes, I can. I can. Yes. 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 I will put it in. I don't mind putting in there at all. Okay. But taking tests is not studying. Please, please, please don't mistake that. And oh my gosh, don't think just because I've done pocket prep for the last 6 months and now I'm finally scoring 80s that I know it. No, baby, you don't. You just, that's not studying. So if you can talk to me like a 6-year-old and tell me Erickson stages, and I say, I'm in stagnation versus generativity, and you can tell me what that means in your own words, that's when you're ready. Okay, so I've got to be able to hear it. And many times I'll ask clients, so what does that mean? And you'll repeat my words from a video. You'll repeat like Rosenthal's words that you don't know it. You don't know it. And that's not gonna help you pass. So that's why I really say take the 90 days. I do say, uh, uh, 3 hours a day. And when I don't mean 3 hours a day sitting down reading a book, it can be 3 hours a day listening to one of the videos. It can be 3 hours a day of looking at your sticky notes while you're getting dressed in the morning. If you're using sticky notes, don't do that while you're driving. Okay, but at lunch, and then at night again, same material, the exact same material. The only way you're going to learn it is repetition. And I'm not teaching you something that you don't do anyway. You do this all the time. So to put the words with what you do. So if you start putting, the verbiage, reflection, and empathetic, all those things in your case notes, they'll make so much more sense. So there really is what you already know. Okay, I'm gonna share some of these. Uh-huh. Yes, 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 yes. We suggest 1 hour a week, and if you tutor with us individually, there's no charge for the group session. So it's 1 hour individual, it's an hour and a half for groups, and then We guarantee it if you follow our instructions, you attend the sessions you're supposed to, and if you don't attend them, go back and watch them, and then don't test until we say that you're ready, or coach says that you're ready. If that means pushing your test date back, because I've had to say that to a couple of people, and that's hard to say. I hate saying that, but I'm going to be honest with you. We're going to be honest with you. My team and I do this all day, every day. So we're going to be honest with you. But yes. So all I do is teach. So if you have anything about the business, send an email. If you haven't met Prudence yet, she's our director of operations. All I really, really want to do is teach. So I don't like the scheduling. I don't like the billing. I don't like any of that stuff. It's, I honestly don't know. So I'm sure we can get you in. I don't know what our wait list is like. That I don't know that. So, but it's drpam2020 at gmail.com. Also, if you guys will make sure that you are subscribing to our YouTube channel, when I release new videos, you will be the first to be notified. Put that in the chat box as well. Repetition, repetition, repetition is the key. I cannot say that enough. And you have to know it. You will thank me when you're on the test. You're like, oh yeah, I saw this, I heard this, I know what this means. You will be like, oh yeah, Dr. Pam was right. Maybe. Uh-huh. So our students who've never worked in the field do much, much better because it's a reading test. It's a reading test. People that have worked in the field know that the test is not true, right? And on the test, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a perfect area, right? It's a perfect environment. Life is good. The code of ethics says that you cannot treat the family, right? The individual, the siblings, and the family. You can't treat all those people. That's unethical. Every agency does it. So if you don't know that part, it makes the test so much easier because many times what you're doing in your agency is unethical. And please don't say Dr. Pam said for the test. That is not the right answer. So you do much, much better if you haven't worked in the field. And a lot of you will probably study with a partner, kids, things like that, and you'll find that the person you're studying with can answer the questions easier than you, just because they're reading it. They're not trying to memorize it, so they're just based on what they've read. Hmm. I'll do some questions, guys. Okay. Okay. So in my chat box, that's our YouTube channel. So really, if you will like us and subscribe to our channel, you will be notified when we release things. Yes, I am. I'll put it in the chat box. Anything I'm using today. Okay. I'm gonna share my screen. Yes. Hmm. They do not. They do not. They do not. What I suggest that my clients who are tutoring with me individually is hold this lesson until you get to this area. Okay. So when I finish, what's recorded now, it's the MP4 is in the chat box. It'll be in this chat box for 30 days. I will come back later on today and I'll put a YouTube link, and the YouTube link will be yours forever, ever. Amen. But you won't be able to get into this chat box after 30 days, but you'll always have the YouTube information. So anything you've put in here, anything that I've put in the box you want to save, don't do it now because you'll get bumped out. Don't do it now. Just wait. When I end, go back and just right click it and save it to your desktop, save it wherever you want to save it. It's yours to keep forever. So if you're tutoring with me or any of my coaches, we usually start with careers, right? I do the same thing every 90 days when it comes to my group sessions. It's a regular schedule. So if I did it like the first of the last 30 days, I'll do it the first of this every 3 months, 90 days. You can see the schedule on our Facebook page. It tells you what it's doing, but so yes, so but I don't suggest you do that unless you're close to the end. I suggest you stay in your area. You've got to know careers. When I say super and I ask you, he's got 5 developmental tasks, right? And he's got 5 stages. You've got to know those. If you're in the maintenance stage, you got to know what age that is. And like super is exact ages and stages, right? He's not one that you can be, if you're not 24, if you're 24 and not in your career, super says you're behind. And you just have to know that. So okay, you're very welcome. Okay, so let me just get some questions in, guys. Okay, so let's look at number 2. I think I talked about this. Experiential family therapy, this is family therapy, is focused on what? Okay, A, fitting, and put your answer in the chat box for me, fitting various theoretical concepts into the unique dysfunctional role of the family, the here and now, promotion of the development of healthier interaction patterns in the family with through therapist neutrality or projection of understanding. Like what? Right? I don't know why you're not using accommodations if you're dyslexic. Dyslexic, you should have a reader. Sorry, that's just you should have a reader. I'm sorry. Why? Okay. Anyway, that's I'm gonna get off that horse today. But no, why do we pretend that somehow, unless they're physical, that they're not? We don't need accommodations. That no, if it was a client, you'd say go and get accommodations. You need everything you can to help this. Make it equality. Okay, so most of you said here and now because I said that belongs to gosh, Gestalt, and Gestalt is an experientialist. So is that enough to know that's the right answer? And unfortunately, this test doesn't give you the rationale. Oh, I said that already, right? Didn't I? I said he is so Gestalt is existential because he had the question. We're not recording any. Well, I'm recording. Yes, I am still. Okay. Existentialism is why do I exist, right? Okay. So what I know happened is, and the answer is B. You see there, I'll back up. Okay. What happened is because I said to you that this belongs to Gestalt, you didn't even read those. Most of you just picked B and you didn't read the others. That's never, 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 never a good thing. Read them all. And that happens a lot. That right? You know that's a word. I know that belongs to whoever, and I don't even read the others because I see that word. And yes, it does match. And yes, you're right. But I want you to read all of the sentences, all of them carefully and rule out. Okay. That's going to get you there. And many times the test questions that we use, are most often retired test questions, right? So when you get to the test, many times it's just written like 2 or 3 words differently, and you think, oh, I know this one, and I don't read it. It's a reading test, guys. You gotta read those questions. Okay. Number 3, and so see how what we went to when they were very in plain English to these are what the test questions look like. You're like, what the heck does that mean? So not only do you have to understand the content, you have to be able to read the question and kind of understand what it's asking me. And like this one, like, oh my gosh, there are like words in there that like so many like it's very high verbiage. You have to know like these big words. Number 3, the fundamental feature by which existential therapy is distinguished from the other schools of therapy that precede it is what? What is it? So this distinguished from the schools of therapy that precede. What does that mean? Somebody explain the question to me. Does it mean follow or before? Got it. So it's asking you. So before I even look at those answers, I need to understand what the question is asking me. It's asking me, what about existentialists, right? How is that different than the ones that came before it? Okay. If you don't get that, you're not going to be able to answer the question. So, a lot of times, you're going to spend a whole lot of time just reading the questions, right? Okay. So, A, it focuses on a concrete experience rather than understanding on thoughts and feelings. B, it focuses on interpreting human behavior. C, the use of free association. Or D, an interest in how the thoughts influence behavior. So, what makes this one different? I know it's not C. C is outright free association. That is not my answer because that belongs to Freud or Jung. Okay. So I've taken B out. Let's see, a focus on concrete experience rather than understanding the thoughts and feelings. He did use the word feminology, didn't he? So let's keep that one in for a minute. A focus on interpreting human behavior. Did existentialism interpret it? He talked about who I am, why I'm here, why I exist. And D, an interest on how thoughts influence behavior. That sounds a lot like CBT to me, doesn't it? So when I'm going through those, I'm trying to rule out and tell you and be able to figure out like what it is or what it can't be. So I'm always going to rule out two, and then I'm going to come back to rule out two. I usually get two left, and we compare the two to each other. Okay, so now you know that. Put your answer in the chat box. I see an A. I see an A. D. Again, this one doesn't. I don't use this one often because it doesn't give you the explanations. It just tells you the answer. It is A. Okay, let's go back and see how I got there. I know people in this group are like, what? What? Okay, so let's see how I got there. Okay, so I know existentialism. I know because I just told you what it was, right? So existentialism is what is my purpose? Why am I here? I'm looking for anxiety and pain, all those things, right? That he used. So, and the question asks me, how is this different than all the ones that came before it? Okay. So I ruled out C right away because I know that's psychoanalytic. So that came long before this one. Okay. So focus on interpreting human behavior. That's really more of a Freudian approach, didn't he? Like when you did this, he'll tell you what that really meant. And on how thoughts influence behavior, that's CBT. He said if you change your thinking pattern, right, it'll change your behavior. So the word, so feminology, that belongs to existentialism. So that is what A means. It's a focus on your concrete experience rather than on understanding your thought. So that's like, it is what it is. Whatever how the client sees it and describes it, that's what it is. Okay. So ask me questions on that one. Mhm. So how is this different than the ones that came before it? So it's B, C, and D are came before it, but that doesn't mean. Wait, hold on. Now you confuse me. The fundamental feature by which existential is extinguished from the schools of therapy that preceded it. Okay, so I ruled out B, C, and D because I know that existentialism doesn't answer those questions. So free association belongs to somebody else. So I ruled out the ones that can't belong to existentialism. How is it different than the others? I didn't make the questions up, I swear I didn't. Okay. Okay. We didn't talk about this one. These are those listening terms, right? Those communication terms. Active listening just really means listening. It's how my body is. I'm what's the term? Solar. I've got square shoulders, open arms. I am making eye contact with a client. All of those things. I'm showing them that they're listening. That is what my body does. But my responding to the client, there are ways that I can respond to the client. So, discrepancy in a client's message would most likely be dealt with by which of the counselor's response? Interpretation, confrontation, reflection, summarization. Before you answer, anyone answer yet? Okay, so summarization is at the end. So, at the end of the conversation, at the end of the group, I'm going to summarize what we talked about. I can also use summarization at the beginning of the next session. I can say, so last week we talked about, don't you put your answers in the chat box yet. You better hold those answers. Okay. So what I'm talking about is I want to make sure that we've finished up. And if I have to bring it up next time, that's fine. That's summarization. Reflection always includes feelings. If it says the therapist gives a feeling back the client didn't say, reflection always includes feelings. Interpretation is taking what the client said, and I'm then trying to put a positive spin on it to make sure that he can see often the other way around it. Okay, I'm trying to interpret it so we can see it a little bit differently. And then confrontation, of course, is whenever I think someone is not being honest with me, we're going to confront them. And we do confrontation, probably not on the first session, right? Because trying to make that bond, that therapeutic relationship, but we do use confrontation. Okay, now you can answer. You got it. Someone said because they are incongruent. What does that mean? Tell me what words in the sentence to prove that to me. You're right, by the way, but tell me why. What words? You got it. You got it. So my messages are going to be verbal and also nonverbal. And if those don't match, then I'm lying. That simple, right? I'm lying. So when I discrepancy in the message, oh, I tell you I'm on a diet, you know what? And you hear me on the phone ordering some like KFC being delivered. You'll say, well, Dr. Pam, that what? Right? Those don't match. Those don't match. So incongruent statements are they don't match. So genuineness is the term that Carl Rogers used, right? He said we should be congruent. The therapist should be congruent. So what's coming out of my mouth should match my body. And that's how the client knows that I'm genuine. When it doesn't match, then we're looking at dishonesty. Okay. In real life, and also for the test, but in real life, you're always going to believe the body, not the mouth. Okay. Because our hips don't lie, Shakira. Honestly. So one of the things that I've done in the past is really help help big jewelry members. People are going to sit on the jury. Wow. And we that's what you look for is your body movements. Ah, four. When a counselor restates the affect and the content of a client, he or she is what? Summarizing, interpreting, reflecting, or paraphrasing. When a counselor restates the affect, AFFECT, and the content, what am I doing? Okay, Lisa, why did you pick C? Yes, exactly. Because I said to you before, reflecting always includes feelings. My affect, remember, that is my mood. So then if I am restating the mood of the client, the feelings of the client, that's always going to be reflection. If it just said the content, I'd be paraphrasing. Okay, so paraphrase is how you got through grad school. You change every fifth word, so spell check would pick it up, right? So paraphrasing is making sure the client that knows that I heard him, but I'm putting it back in my own words. But it's just the content. Does that seem like a pretty typical test question? Those that have taken it. Well, yes, Dr. Pam, you're right on. No, Dr. Pam, that's totally off. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That is. So if you don't know what that means, and that's what I hear. Oh my gosh, there's one line, and I didn't know what it meant. So if you don't know what that means, that's the problem. So when I said affect, that's what I mean, affect. So when I say that you have to study, I really mean you have to study. Okay. Ah. Six, the ego uses blank to reduce anxiety when rational, logical methods are not accessible. The preconscious, the reality principle, primary process thinking, or defense mechanisms. The ego utilizes what? So lots of people wonder, come on, come on. So the problem with this is that these are all Freudian words, right? Oh my gosh, don't belong to Freud. What is the answer? I think I said earlier that my ego protects me, right? So my ego protects my defense mechanisms protect my ego because my ego can't my I can't handle it. So the answer is defense mechanisms. They reduce the anxiety when rational logical methods are not accessible. So, right, I'm going to suppress it, right, put it down, push it way down. I can suppress it where I realize this is happening and I'm choosing to suppress it. The reality principle, that is my ego. You're absolutely right. That is my ego, but that's not the right answer. And primary process thinking also belongs to Freud. Okay, so I really need to read the question to know what they're asking me. The preconscious, right? Those are the thoughts that I can bring up if I really try. Okay. I'll say something. What's that train of thought? Yeah, whatever I was going to say is probably not true anyway. When it comes to seven, so sometimes people struggle with how to answer these. So when it says this is to this, or there's a line and a line, the first word needs to match the first word, and the second one matches the second term. So then reflection is the same as I'm going to look down, which of those is the same as reflection, and then which of those is the same as paraphrase. And then I know when those both match, that's my answer. Okay. So reflection is to paraphrase as what? Those are called metaphors, by the way, metaphorical thinking. It is me. It absolutely me. Based on the other question that we saw before, right? Affect is the mood. So reflection and paraphrasing is content. I think I said those exact words actually. And also, I am testing from a different book that we studied from. Okay, so you'll see a different way. Sometimes the questions are written, but the content is the same. This is I said I used Helwig to teach you, and I'm using a different test to test you. So you get used to having it the different ways. Yes, that was affect. You're absolutely right. That was B. Okay, number 8. The client says, it seems to me that my husband uses alcohol as a substitute for love. This upsets me, but we haven't talked about this in our 3 years of marriage. The counselor says you're upset because you're not able to talk to your husband about his drinking, how his drinking is affecting your marriage. The counselor's response can be best classified as what? Confrontation, approval, summarization, and interpretation. Lisa, where you see some confrontation in this one? Is she giving me incongruent statements? Mm-mm. Okay. And even if I wasn't sure that it was interpretation, and that's my answer, D, right? I should know the others. Confrontation, you're giving me two things that don't match. Approval is not a term, right? So, and summarization is at the end. So then interpretation has to be the right answer. 10. Which of the following is not emphasized in Adlerian therapy? Which one is not? So three of these things I would see in Adler, one I would not. A, style of life. B, Oedipal struggles. C, birth order. D, social interest. It is B. So somebody tell me why you chose B. Tiffany, are you there? Go ahead. Yes, it's a Freudian term. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So that's oral anal phallic that happens in my phallic stage, right? And only Freud believed in the psychosexual stages. Adler was a Neo-Freudian. He did believe in the unconscious, right? But he didn't believe in the sexual development. And I do know unified lifestyle, size of life, birth order, social interests are all terms that belong to Adler. Okay, talk about this one. And the ABC model related to rational emotive therapy, the B stands for what? So it's the ABCDE of REBT: beliefs, barriers, baseline, or behaviors. What does the B stand for? All right, that is our rational beliefs, right? Our faulty beliefs. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, good, good, good. 16, it's on there, 2 pages. Make it a little bit smaller so we can. That's too small. Trying to get on the, so you can see it all. Okay. So 16, transactional analysis theorists consider three ego states to be the central part of personality. The healthy individual does what? A, develops a meaningful sense of self by modifying the three ego states, predominantly relying on the adult ego state. C, overcomes the influences of the three ego states. Or D, is in an inappropriate and integrated manner, relies on the three ego states. Okay. So I said the purpose before is to, um, what I'm trying to get rid of that childhood, right? That childhood script, the script I learned in childhood. But what the theory is, and what I think what I said is we're trying to align all the ego states. I don't want to do the games, right? So I'm going to be very, very honest and frank and not play the games. So develops a meaningful sense of self by modifying the three ego states. So that makes sense because the three ego states are in there. So let's keep that one. B, predominantly relies on the adult ego state. It doesn't. We should all be coming ego adult to adult, but it doesn't predominantly rely. We need all three of those ego states. The problem is when we're coming ineffectively, right? I'm coming from the C stage when I should be coming from the A stage. C, overcomes the influence of the three ego states. Or D, is an appropriate and integrated manner that relies on all three ego states. So my answer is D. Okay. So the goal is to keep all three ego states where it needs to be. So if I'm coming from the child ego state and someone is coming from the parent ego state, that's okay. Remember, that's complementary occasionally. So those ego states happen. There's sometimes I'm going to be in a childlike state. I just can't use that to manipulate you. That's the problem. Okay. 18. Themes that are brought up repeatedly in counseling almost are most likely focused on what through the counselor's response. We'll try that again. Well, what they say. The themes that are brought up repeatedly in counseling are most likely focused on through which counselor response? Reflection, summarization, paraphrasing, interpretation. Okay. Themes that are brought up repeatedly in counseling, they're brought up repeatedly. So the counselor would what? When I keep hearing the theme over and over again, what would I do? What would I use? What technique? So I don't see any feelings. I know it can't be reflection, right? That's not that. I don't see any feelings in there. Summarization is at the end, but maybe let's hold on to that one. So paraphrasing or interpretation. 18 is B. That was summarizing. There you go. Okay. So if they keep being brought up, I probably just keep talking about it, right? They're brought up. So we need to like wrap this up and go on to the next one. So we're going to summarize. That's okay. And this is what you said. This is what you said. We're going to try to keep going. In 21, in RET, so RET is now REBT. So if you see RET, it's the exact same thing on the test. Don't freak out. It's an older test. So RET. In the REBT therapy, a basic assumption is that human beings what? Think, emote, and behave simultaneously. Behave and then emote. Emote without thinking or think without emoting. Emoting are my feelings, right? So to show that emotion. So what do I do in REBT? So it's that belief system, right? So I've got this activating event, something happens, right? And then I've got these emotions, this right, my irrational belief system. Emote without thinking. I see that to be the most one. Let's go down. One is A. Right? What? Let's go back. Think, emote, and behave simultaneously. You knew it. Well, I'm glad you knew it, Lisa. And how did you know it? What words in the question proved it to me? Okay. So you're right, but I want to know the words in the questions, right? So not what I think, what I know, what words it says. Okay. In REBT, I know what happens, right? Is I first the A, the activating event, and then my belief system, and there are consequences based on my belief system, emotional consequences. So REBT says ABCD, ABC happen at the same time. Then the D comes in, right? And D is I'm going to come back and work on it. Mhm, mhm, mhm. So where did you see that? What answer would you have picked? Okay. So when I think of the route of REBT, I'm thinking of what, according to a theorist, what does REBT look like? So if it said, yes, yeah. So if it said, um, many people have faulty thinking, right? So I would be looking for that kind of question. This is just like, um, the basic human assumption of REBT is that we have these irrational beliefs based on what happens. It does, right? Exactly, exactly, exactly. Exactly. Because what happened in the field has nothing to do with the test. Nothing whatsoever. Okay, so nothing at all. So you have to just know that. So it would be nice and it'll make it easier if you put the REBT into your practice, right? Because then I can make a very conscious effort to then know REBT because I'm using it. And if you're not going to use it, you can say, oh, this is REBT. Yes, yes, exactly. The fact is that, well, yeah, that was, yeah. They're all happened at the same time, and I was looking for those things. Yes. So remember I said REBT and CBT are many times you'll say familiar words. Okay. So when I'm thinking of CBT, that's where think comes first. So this is saying the belief system, then the rational belief system, then the feelings, and then the C. They all happen at the same time. Last one, guys. So, insight and reality therapy is considered. Before I answer the question, let me go back and reach through the back of my mind and remember. Oh, it's my pre-conscious, right? Oh gosh, she talked about reality therapy today. What words did she say? She said something like choice theory and something like we've got these five basic needs that we're trying to get met, and choice and responsibility. Right? That's how your brain is acting right now. Right? Going back, recalling. So, and so exactly. Unfortunately, that won't help me with this question, but it's the right answer. It might, if I know, yes, that might help. That's glass. You're absolutely right. Okay, A, something that occurs as a result of change attitudes. B, an outcome of therapist teaching. C, not necessary condition for behavior change to take place. Or D, necessary before behavior change can occur. So, insight and reality therapy is considered what? We'll go back to this one, okay? So let me go back. Again, I'm not using the same source. I'm going back to a different source. So we're going to see. Okay, so reality therapy, right? Although it's based on choice theory, Glasser continued to refer to it as the happiness as reality. Individuals determine their own fate. They're in charge of their own lives. Our perception controls our behavior. We have five of those needs we're always trying to fill. Okay. He said we act to control the world around us, and the real world is important to the extent it helps us satisfy our needs. We may not be satisfying our needs directly or correctly. Okay, so the characteristics of reality therapy include emphasizing choice and responsibility, and B, rejecting transference. Keep the therapy in the present. Okay, so those two terms that remind that he says, we're not going to, you don't need any insight, right? Insight is a Freudian thing. Insight is a Adlerian thing, going back and trying to figure out why this happened. Like, he didn't say that. He said, "Yeah, no, you made your own choices. You got to deal with your own choices, right? You're responsible for that." Right. So, and again, so that was from a different source. So I'm now going to discuss. It says insight, and this one I got to go back to what the other source said, and I'm looking for something that's similar to what that said because the words might not match exactly what I'm looking for. So, insight therapy is considered what? Something that occurs as a result of change attitude, an outcome of the therapist's feelings, not a necessary condition for behavior change to take place, or necessary before behavior change can take place. I was looking for one that said wasn't even there, doesn't even care. Okay, so that's not my answer. I don't see that one, right? So he really didn't believe in insight. So C is the best answer. Okay, so I got there. When I see insight, I'm always looking for that's a Freudian term. That's an unconscious term. Behaviorists in general could care less why this happened. We just want to change your behavior. I will put. Well, you do, but I got to find the best of the four, right? So knowing what I know, I got to find the best of the four, right? That. Uh-huh. No, go ahead. No, those are two different thoughts. Thank you, though. Thank you. This book, this is just a test that I have. I'm going to put it in the chat box as well as the thing with this test is there's no rationales behind it. So don't freak out because there's just no rationales. And if you've never seen it before, it's an older test. That means we probably don't teach it anymore. So don't freak out. I always say in general, when you're working, when you're doing, yes, you will get. When I finish, I promise you, everything I'll use will be in this chat box. I'm a teacher. I know not to hand it out before class. Okay. So I know I have to hand it out before class or during class. Y'all ain't paying attention to me. You're looking through the book. So, um, Well, awesome train of thought. So when you're studying, and you always need to use more than one source, okay? So because a lot of you use the purple book, and the purple book answered ask the questions very differently than the way the test questions are asked, right? But the input, the information in the purple book is great. So what I want to do though is I always want to make sure I use more than one source. Hellwig and Pocket Prep are the exact same thing. Okay, so that's not two different sources. And I'm not just doing tests, I'm learning, especially from doing Pocket Prep. It tells me exactly what page in the purple book and what page in the Hellwig book, exactly what page it's on. Okay. Well, let me just remind you, it's right there. So you really want to be utilizing that as a study tool. Share my screen. What do you think? What do you think? Somebody else want to help her out. What did I say earlier? What did I say earlier? Somebody help her out here. Yes. No, no. There will be a YouTube link. There will be. I can't guarantee it's going to be tonight, but there'll be a YouTube link. Okay. So my dog here's like, Mommy, we sat here all day and we were good today. We need some attention. Okay, I'm just going to show you. So when I'm looking at a couple things, can you see Pocket Prep? You see my screen? Okay. So remember when you're doing this, okay, you can always break it down by subjects. So if you only want to study ethics, the problem with Code of Ethics, right, is those research questions are in there also. So if you just want to study that, that's no, you break it down. If you want to study these two areas, that you break it down. It'll also tell you exactly, the ones you miss, right? So, but what I want to know, what's going to show you, if you and you probably know this already, but it tells you. So this one is only in the Helwig book, but it tells you exactly where to find more information on it, right? So that's what I'm looking for. So, and most of the time, it'll tell you both books. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so it tells you where to find it in the purple book and where to find it in the Helwig book. That's the goal, is to go back and read it and study it. Why did I miss that question? Or why did I get it right? Right? I need to go back and pick up the content. That's I gotta have content. Okay, so just make sure that you're doing that if you're using this as a study guide. Okay, I'm gonna hang up. So anything else you want to ask me? You got like 3 seconds, maybe 4 or 5 at the most. You're so welcome. You poor people that have nothing else better to do than hang out with me on a Saturday night. So, nothing else to do either. Bye.